So I came out in 1978 when I was 16 years old, and 3 years later, I lost my first friend to AIDS. So it's always been a part of my social, sexual, spiritual identity. And, I became a Christian and joined MCC when I was 19. So again, 3 years later in 1981, and my first friend died later on that year. So from the very beginning of both my adulthood, because I wasn't raised Christian or raised in any religious tradition. So my first opening up to spirituality through Christianity was through the lens of HIV. And, in my lay years, from 81 to 89, when I became a minister, I was very actively involved in AIDS ministry. We had the Modesto AIDS Project. This was in Modesto, California, where we would make clean syringe kits to give to IV drug users, which at the time, just to give them a flippin' clean needle was illegal. But we did that. I was an AIDS buddy. I had, in succession, several gay men who I was their friend as they died because their family had rejected them. And so I would just go and, rub their feet or just be with them. And I did that for several. And I was very politically active. I would go to Sacramento and protest at the Capitol there. One time I remember there was probably, several hundred, if not 2,000 or 3,000 of us there. And we were told just to march silently toward the Capitol building until we were tapped on the shoulder, and then just to drop. And when we dropped, somebody would come and do a chalk outline of our body. And then we would get up to show this is how many people are dying. So I was very active in all of that. That was pre-ACT UP. We would lobby the state legislature in Sacramento. I remember talking to one state senator. He's like, well, why should there be health care for people with HIV? I mean, I survived cancer and I didn't have any special assistance. And, it was just like this complete, in some ways it's so very similar to today, and in other ways very different. But then I became a minister in 89 and moved to Long Beach. It was a big city. So there was a lot of, I lost 33 friends to AIDS, 33 personal friends. And I did scores and scores and scores of memorial services and sat at the bedside of men who were dying, particularly men, gay men. There was nothing done at the federal government. Ronald Reagan was the president then, in the beginning years of the AIDS pandemic, 1981, his inauguration. And he wasn't as bad as the current regime. He didn't spout lies, or he just didn't talk about it and didn't direct any money toward it and waited too late. And so a lot more could have been done. So in the early days when not everybody could get AZT because it was a trial and you really just kind of had to pull some strings. When people died, we would go in and collect the AZT and take it to this AIDS collective, or we would give it to people, who didn't have any other hope or any other AIDS drugs. It wasn't just AZT, but whatever. We would collect it. We didn't just give it back to the hospital or throw it away because there are so many people who couldn't afford it. And I see that kind of similar to today in terms of, everybody's making masks to give out to people, right? We gave out condoms. Now we're giving out masks, and what a great thing. And people, who are helping their neighbors, right? My colleague and friend, Jim Matulski, who was the minister of MCC San Francisco, they had 4 clergy on staff, and there was a policy that no single clergy could do more than 4 memorial services a week so that they wouldn't get burnt out. And people would leave the 11 a.m. service saying, that was a good service, I'll see you at the 1 p.m. service, for Mike. They lost 500 members in 10 years. So like down in Iowa, the lesbian MCC minister had the body of a young man who died delivered to her home because no funeral home would accept it. And she laid him out on her kitchen table and washed his body and dressed him and prepared him for the casket. So, we just did that. Early on in my ministry, I was actually in this kind of boot camp for incoming MCC ministers, the way they did it back then. And I was in Long Beach where the class was being held, and I'd gotten a call that a man in the church had died of AIDS, and he had been very ill, and I knew that, and he wanted me to come be a part of his service. So I left this little training thing. It was a 6-week long thing, but I left one week and to go and to help. I wasn't even a minister yet. I was just a student clergy, as they called it then. But I left to go and be a part of his service. And I'm holding this this memorial service order of service bulletin, and I turn it and I look at the back and I'm like, who's this? This gorgeous young man. And it was him, but I hadn't known him like that. And then I saw that he was my age, which was 27. So, you know, he just looked so much older and more haggard. And then you saw what he was and this light that had been taken away. So it's always just about a quarter of an inch under the surface when I talk about it.